All right, and we are live on YouTube.
Okay, good morning. Call this meeting to order on Friday, August 25th. 8:02, 8:03. All right, can we get a roll call?
Commissioner Fry,
Present?
Commissioner Bissell,
Here.
Commissioner Bicknell,
Here.
Commissioner Green,
Here.
and Commissioner Few.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Okay, great. First, no public comment this morning. So we'll, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Moved. Can I get a second? Second. Okay, moved in second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, on to presentations this morning. Autumn Meadows and Whitman Maple Park concept discussion. Mr. Phipps.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay.
Yeah, let me make you co-host. So you can share.
Well, that's getting switched over. So I'll be presenting kind of a synopsis of what we presented a couple months ago on kind of a programming element and some inspirational images, kind of what we took out from that. And then I'll go into two concepts for each site based on that initial meeting that we had on programming.
You're good to share, Robert.
All right. Let me know when you can see that.
Yep. See it.
All right. All right. So what I have up here was the inspirational images that we used to kind of discuss some of the ideas that we had for the two sites. On the left, Autumn Meadows Park, and on the right, Maple Valley or Maple Avenue and Whitman Drive. So Autumn Meadows Park had an existing, topography that we were looking to, and so we had an idea for hillside playgrounds. Picnic shelters were important. Raised planter beds or community garden was discussed, and a desire for some sort of exercising path or circuitous connection between the upper area of the park and the lower area of the park. And so I've kind of highlighted in green those kind of four things that we took away from the initial programming elements. For Maple Avenue, Whitman Drive, we discussed a number of elements. Shade structures were important, or some sort of shade opportunities. Dry creek bed was supported, and then there was a high level of interest to a pickleball court and a pump track option. So you'll see those into our two concepts. Now I'm going to switch over to Autumn Meadows Park, and these are the two concepts. Does the group have copies of these boards in front of them? Just at all?
On the computer.
Okay. I will zoom in then and get a little more closer to us for everyone can see this. So this is concept one for Autumn Meadows. So the upper terraced area and the lower terraced areas on the bottom right. This is a plan view. And this is what we called healthy habitats. This was reinforced by a community garden, raised planter beds, and sort of an exercise path that could be incorporated. So on the lower portion of the site, we have a semi-fenced raised bed community garden area with some shelter opportunities, an orchard program behind that, and pollinator gardens to support that kind of use of cross-pollination between bees and other butterflies and stuff with the programmed community garden. The exercise path winds, because we have a parking lot in the top left. That was one of the elements that was suggested as well. It's 5 stalls, one of those being ADA. Our path has a couple switchbacks to to meet the, it's not true ADA, it's not 5% or less, it's actually 8% and less, which is kind of a trail guideline standards. We were looking at 5%, and it would be requiring a significant amount of walls to make that true ADA accessible. As I go in through some of the elements, closer images, you'll see some screening opportunities where we've kind of created some vertical elements to kind of break the transitional screening kind of to the south. Just a couple breaks just to kind of soften up the viewing area there. So on the community garden area, we have the picnic shelter and park trail. This is community gardens kind of in the background here, picnic shelter nearby. Would have be some sort of fencing, either traditional fence like this, or maybe something a little more secure if there is a concern for vandalism. And the path starts to meander and wraps up to the upper terrace, which is kind of in the upper area. So this is kind of a aerial perspective of that transition of the exercise path, community garden. We've got room for 7 or 8 tables there, depending on how you configure this. We propose a little bit of a utility shed for equipment use. And we're using large boulders as kind of the retaining feature rather than vertical concrete walls, just to kind of blend into the overall design. And then a little bit of a closer view of the community garden and orchard trees associated with that. And here is an example of the exercise path that's leading to leading away from the parking lot area. It does have a little bit of a drop down just to separate the use and kind of indicate the 2 different functions for those. So before I move into the concept 2 for this site, is there any questions or comments?
I question about the maintenance of those orchard trees. I mean, I love the idea of it. Yet in the valley that has all this commercially produced fruit, can we maintain those consistent with what all the farmers would want?
Yeah. Any other comments or questions?
I'm curious if is that parking lot adjacent to the existing parklet that's up there, or is that taking place of it?
Taking place of it. We go back to here. So we're using this existing triangled area for the parking lot.
While parking, I think, is a high value item, I do feel like having just finally sort of at least got that park off the ground, it feels like a hard thing to rip it back up to put parking in. But of course, we're adding a much higher value park down below. So
there was discussion on our initial meeting that there was room for parallel parking. So that may be an opportunity still there. I wanted to show the panelists that there was ability to get a few parking spots if the desire was to have off-street parking.
Yeah, I was gonna say 12th Street's super wide over there, so I mean, I think parking could be easily accommodated on both sides of that, and then maybe just slow down traffic with a rapid flashing beacon. It could be activated or something like that.
So is there no parking down below?
That is the problem. So a little bit of background since you're new to this, Norman. So Autumn Meadows Park, that was never actually designed to a city standard because that was actually a private HOA park. And then the HOA, they pretty much have gotten to a point where they're having problems doing like much of what they're supposed to do. So they petitioned the city for the city to take over all the infrastructure, and then they would form an LID, and then essentially we take bonds and they pay it back. That's what has happened. So we basically have acquired this park, but currently it has equipment on it that's a couple decades old and doesn't really meet standard. And there was no, parking, down there. In the streets, in Lago Meadows, I mean, you can get like vehicles down there and people can walk, but as far as accommodating parking on that drop on Newgate, that is, I don't really see how you do it, but there is ample opportunity on 12.
I see potential for people to want to park down below anyway, because if that's the activity area and you've got stuff in your car that you want to get to the picnic zone.
Yeah.
Folks are gonna be down there anyway. But having been part of the group that put together what exists currently at Park Lit up on the top. It does seem like a step backwards to turn it back into parking after we just unparkified it.
Yeah.
Although this looks perfectly logical.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the only part where I would cringe at getting rid of that, cause I mean, Public Works just finished putting the sign in, like wrapping it up, so that would be a weird.
Step backwards.
Yeah.
But what's the time frame on this instruction?
Well, I mean, really, I wanted you all to give direction on what type of design you wanted, and I was hoping to get essentially a final action on this probably the next meeting. Because this year, there is a RCO park maintenance grant that they're doing from COVID funds, and then there's also another one. They're creating out money they're getting from the Climate Pledge Arena. So I think there's opportunity to get a lot of this paid for by the state. But we need to be, basically by the next meeting, we're gonna need to arrive at the point where folks are okay with it, cause both the grant programs I'm looking at are like one-time things. And both this park and the Maple Park are small enough where I don't think they compete really good in their traditional programs. So I think we have a window of opportunity here.
There's another concept, isn't there?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, let's see the second one, Robert.
Okay, so the second one doesn't have parking, so that was, so that's good to see the difference here. So as a result of no parking, we don't have to do an additional switchback. We can just run this long stretch if we wanted to, because there was a desire to connect the two. And it ends in a kind of a sheltered area. And you'll see that throughout the concept drawings, there's a number of these kind of inspirational or educational signage. And we call this ecosystem exploration, and it's based on a kind of a child, a play area that you'll see down here. There's a hillside playground, but our walk is kind of an educational walk. There are different ecosystems throughout the walk that educate the individual walking through, and there's different figurines and animals that are throughout the paths. The signage is there to ask questions. So like once you complete the walk or you start at the walk, you say, how many bunnies, rabbits did you find along the path, right? And that gives the child an opportunity to start to, engage in a game and say, did you find 13, and then maybe in some educational opportunities related to that, like something about, how, if there's more than one rabbit, what is the proper name for a family of rabbits? Things like that would be supportive in this concept. So we have a starting or a stopping spot. We could connect this sidewalk pretty easily here to make this, or increase some additional shrubs and stuff just to prevent that access. But the walk still is 8%, which is trail design recreational meeting standards. We have a walkthrough here that ends into the hillside playground, which you see at this bottom right corner. And then you have another shelter opportunity and some seating options as well. So this is what the hillside playground would in theory look like. We've got the kind of following the existing grade that is currently out there. You have a number of programmed elements that a little bit of a nature play, incorporating some bright, vibrant colors to support that kind of ecosystem, inspiration and vibrant colors, very offsetting, and then different programmed elements that kind of support the ecosystem theme. So nature play, wood elements, you've got some rocks to climb on, wood, different, you can see a little frog back there of an animal, and you'll see that repeated throughout. Some seating opportunities that could incorporate it in addition to the covered area. Here's another view of the hillside playground from the top, looking back towards the sheltered area. Two slides are programmed in here, and additional kind of climbing rope climbers, swing set incorporated, and then some seating areas adjacent to that, so adults could watch and while the kids have some fun. So this is a little bit more on that ecosystem exploration and that educational opportunities. So throughout the walk, you would start and be able to see different animals. So like you could have a reptile zone, maybe with like an alligator and some other different features. You have signage that would support some educational opportunities adjacent to those. Here in the rabbit meadow zone, you have a sign, and then you can see a little rabbit kind of poked out here and here. So there's one on the corner, and you'd hide these or somewhat hide those throughout the play or walk area. And again, you count the number of rabbits, and maybe you're incorrect, and you could go back and say, oh, I got to find that last one that I didn't get. Up towards the top of the walk, we'd have a duck or aviary zone, so this could further support some of the educational opportunities. Screening would be use of some sort of native plants with some vines to help reduce some of that or increase the screening down into the south with a combination of some trees. We didn't add a lot of trees here just so that you could kind of see, visually you could see the rendering without being impeded by the actual tree shown there. So at that time, I'll take some questions or comments on this design.
Comments, anyone?
Does that leave the upper current park there? I see it hasn't been converted to parking, or does it?
Yeah,
change that?
It would change that. It would eliminate that upper area, and this left limits right where the shelter is. That's the left limits of that existing upper area.
Okay.
So if you left the existing Perseverance Park, where would that path connect to the existing?
Roughly about here. So in theory, you could leave it as is and then just connect your path up to it.
I mean, it seems like at the very least, it's going to need some update or, some additional pieces added to it. So I don't have as much concern with a bit of redesign with it. I just looking at the two, I love the aesthetic of the first rendering. I think it looks phenomenal, and this one does as well. My biggest thing with the community gardens, and this comes from a place of just not knowing, is wondering how broad the use really will be. The community garden takes a lot of space and limits its access to really kind of a few people in comparison to something like a traditional park where anybody could come along and come and join in. So that's something that I know we had talked last time about. So there's so many of these parks are focused towards young children, and there's, I think, the age of some of the surrounding neighborhoods and stuff isn't exactly super youthful, but I do still think it limits the accessibility and use of that park to a smaller group of people by doing that. So I think the second rendering from that standpoint brings more value to the community as a whole.
It'd be interesting to know more about the demographics close by. in the neighborhoods that are likely to use this. The second rendering is a lot more focused on play and kids. The first rendering was more focused on sort of gardening and introspection. With the limited amount of space, I mean, it's really admirable, both of them, how much has been able to be packed in. I guess I'm with Jordan too, is the rendering of the first rendering was very engaging, very rich. And this one is a lot simpler, but more small children oriented, which may be the right demographic for that, area. Maybe the right use for it too, because there's a certain busyness about the traffic that may not lend itself real well to the sort of introspection that the community garden might want to support.
Okay.
Yeah. I would tend to agree with that as well. I mean, just on my own interest, I did do a buffer thing through Esri Business Analysts, and the average age within a quarter of a mile of that's 45. So there's that data. One thing, going back to Leif's comment about parking, because I just thought about this, because we actually just got another property near that as part of the HOA deal. Across from Newgate, there's a stormwater conveyance south of Valpo. That was the one we had the goats eating the brush and stuff. Maybe there's a way of putting some parking on that, because that'd be right across the street below the hill on Newgate, and we own it now.
Nice. Well, I do think that people are gonna wanna park close to where the action is.
Yeah.
So on one end or the other, but if you're gonna take your kids here, you're gonna have to listen to them complain all the way down the hill.
Yeah.
We'll call it fun, manage.
Right.
Any other comments or questions? And the one wonder I have is with the makeover of Lions, which is within a kind of a stone's throw of this, not too far. Are the themes of this with play going to compete with the themes of play in the new park? And so is going in a different direction, does it meet another need, right, within kind of the same proximity? And I really don't know the answer to that, but it's just a wonder.
Yeah.
Good morning, this is Jenna here. So one of my questions about the first design is, with the applications for grants, I'm assuming that if we actually did kind of a informal survey about interest for community gardens, that would help strengthen the proposal, but it'd also tell us if we're on the right track. So I definitely, love the idea of having garden space. The soil here in College Place is a little in the lower spots. It's not great for gardening. So I think there is probably a need. And it would be interesting to see how much actual interest there is to have a plot or a little box. And it could be a kind of a cool rallying point for a certain demographic, maybe a retired demographic in our community that wants to engage and have something to do. So I sort of like kind of the age that we're trying to target here, maybe a little bit older than kids, and just diversity in the park system in general.
And there, one other data point, it's not much of a data point, but we do have a community garden behind the fire station right now. Sunbridge just picked that up this year. We are not oversubscribed, but there's 4 or 5 very active gardeners there, but it's definitely not in a place where the community interacts with the gardeners. And I can see this as being a very positive place of mix of age groups, coming together and, you know, what's growing and what the seasons are and so on.
Well, the aspect of it, exercise, in the presence of gardening, or nice landscaping. I love that idea here too. And there's a natural circuit here that involves gravity. You can go around the outside on, the Newgate in 12th and then come down the exercise path or the other way around. And there's a nice little circuit there that if it's going through, areas that are pleasant and well-designed as these seem to be, people will want to be in that area and will love the opportunity to, make it a pleasant, if you have a Stairmaster or this, which would you rather be doing? So I like aspects of this really well. I'm not joyful about the parking area, but that's just me, and maybe there's a hybrid here that could be done.
I appreciate Jenna's comments about diversity between the parks too. I think that's a big thing, especially as we're looking to this other one as well. Having them be very diverse between each other is a neat idea. I agree about the parking, even if we did go with this model, I think looking for other options there is important. I do also think that a community survey, at least of that near area, would make a lot of sense to have a better understanding of the people who will be utilizing that space the most. Not to say that there won't be people coming from all over, but certainly people within that quarter-mile bubble would be the majority of it. And finding out if there's interest for a community garden from the people who are that nearby. Because if there isn't much, then maybe we look at this design, but look at something else to be able to utilize that space well.
Well, Lions Park is going to be more kid oriented with the splash park and all that. It's also less suited to the growing things on that side of the park, at least, where the way that the hillside is shaped and the amount of sun it gets year round. This is going to be far better as far as growth goes if you can get water where you need it, because it's south facing, and I think that you're going to end up with a really nice growing area.
Yeah, I think aesthetically, I really like this, this version. Robert, where would the existing Perseverance Park be? Where would it end?
We're right about there.
Yeah. I mean, one idea with this one, just because efforts everyone actually get Perseverance Park done. I think my public works, I have a meltdown too if that were to be retouched again. What if maybe we look at moving the parking to that stormwater conveyance site across Newgate? I'm not exactly sure it'll fit, but we do own it. So there might be a way to maybe have a cantilever near the creek.
Could we see a Google map of that?
Yeah, I pulled up a street view of it a second ago. It does look like you could get at least a few spots in there. We're only talking about 4 or 5 up top as well, and it looks like there's room for about that down below.
Yes, technically, if you put where that pathway comes down at Newgate near the shelter, if you put a crosswalk over there and go right across Newgate, that little wooded area with the creek, we own all that now, so maybe shove the spots in there.
What area are you talking about, Mike? I'll zoom in.
So zoom into intersection of Newgate and Balbo.
Balbo.
It's right next to the Autumn Meadows. Yeah, where the trees are at.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there isn't a ton of trees, it's just a ton of brush, and that's what we ran the goats eat because
Where is it again?
this, where.
Oh, right there.
Yeah, they are. So we just acquired that as part of the HOA deal. They own that, and on the south part of the Stone Creek goes along the south part of it, but we do own all of that. So I don't know if you shove like 4 spots in right near the corner, I think maybe there's a way to fit it in. And it would lessen maintenance, cause I mean, as it stood, the goats were out there for about like close to 2.5 months. It was that overgrown.
Wow.
So longer term, we do have to look for a way to figure that thing out because it was like all full of blackberries, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah,
Just
and
one-
I think, oh, go ahead.
Just one kind of functional question. Is there water on the site? And I'm assuming that we would have to have some kind of water for the garden area.
Yeah, well, so the site with the park and there, Stone Creek does go through the south part of that. Now, as far as water goes, we do have a water line right down Newgate, and there is a water service. Because that was a park, although a private park. So there is a water meter around Newgate and Falbo that goes to it. And then we also have another water meter that was put in at Perseverance Park, so there's 2.
Yeah, I think designated parking along the street there, you know, that is 12th is wide. And so, either parallel, I don't know that you could do some angled spots along there. But, you know, just to the curb, I'm just trying to think of like appearance wise that it looks like we're pulling into the park, right? We're angle parking along there, but either way, I think there's plenty of we could designate spots along there that are, you know, are for the park.
Well, and the fact is, the park is not very big, so the parking that we need to access it should be proportioned properly. You know, you get 50 parking spaces for that park, and I don't know, you'll end up with fist fights somewhere along the way. But, you know, I wonder too, if there's a way we could integrate trees up on 12th along the road, like you have on your. That's one of the most inviting things when you have shade. And if there's trees lining it, oh, there we go.
Yeah.
You've already got it. That's, I think, brilliant. And even like the shade structure we were talking about in concept 2. If we could get a large, we talked about this when we were dealing with Perseverance. If we could get a mature tree placed in Perseverance Park, it would serve the needs of a lot of the shade. And it's a natural thing. I know there's some maintenance involved, but it's not like we don't have maintenance with a structure.
Yeah.
So we have people in the community who have the equipment and the capability of transplanting trees, big trees. So.
Yeah, well, and I don't think the current design of Perseverance Park is overcrowded.
No.
It was intended to have some more body to it, and so tree, or I could see that the shade structure from the other design incorporated into that current park.
Mhm.
So, recommendations, or let me ask the question. Jen had brought up, the possibility of kind of surveying that folks in that area. Is
I
that?
believe we would have time to do that. I would say while we're doing that, if there's any sort of direction you want to give them as far as cleaning, finessing the drawings though.
Well, I think we've heard that we want to keep current Perseverance, so we'll tie the design into that. Any changes, so are we kind of feeling like we're leaning towards the first, this design versus the play structure?
If at all possible, it might be nice to see some other alternate that might stand in for the community garden in that same space, keeping the majority of the design, but some other way to utilize that space as well. Thinking of from the same mind of trying to get people to use it as a place to gather and connect.
That would be good, I would think.
Yeah,
I mean, I like the way the path works. I like, that it's going through areas that are pretty. Maybe a few more spots to sit down might be good for some people. But yeah, I mean, if there is another way to accomplish a similar goal.
Well, I don't want to mix them too much, but some of those were pictured stone animals or things. I know my kids at that age would just love that, and a couple of those could be in this design to say, oh, run ahead to that sort of thing. I mean, can we answer the parking question before the next meeting as far as like?
yeah, I mean, one of the things I think, haven't thought of this, and maybe Robert can look into is trying to put some of those spots on that other property.
Yeah, I can definitely look at that.
Cause we're gonna have to do something to minimize maintenance on that anyhow, so, yeah.
I wonder if there's some way to sort of create that, you got a parking zone, yes. And maybe there's something that carries a theme from that parking zone that we have over at the park, so there's sort of a connectivity. Implied there. I mean, it looks like actually, clear some, give the goats their way with it for a while.
Yeah.
It might actually be a nice little area to somehow integrate into the park, but parking seems to be the thing we need. So that's the best use for that.
Robert, any thoughts on tweaks to the lower portion? Any ideas that popped into your head?
Yeah, I think if we eliminate the theme of the community garden aspect, we can rearrange some of those programmatic elements, maybe shift the shelter where the community garden actually is, and then create more of an open kind of grassy area in front, add some more seating. That would be a simple way to kind of just reprogram the use instead of being solely focused on a community garden or raised planter beds as an alternative there. We could look at that, kind of make it more of a open grass with maybe some seating areas or gathering spaces. So increase some opportunities to sit in a larger space out there on that lower half. That seems like a pretty. It also
Okay,
kind of open up the area from access if the parking area is going to be on the other site. By kind of keeping it more grass in front, it also increases safety because you just have more visibility into the site itself.
Wondering if we could build in like a 15-minute loading parking spot down at the bottom of that as well, so it's right on site for people to be able to move picnic supplies and things like that. I guess maybe less important if we get that other lot built though.
Okay, so what I heard was Mike will reach out to this surrounding community. Robert will look at what that might look like, tweaks to that without the garden. Keeping perseverance at the top. I think aesthetically with the hillside, this to me really pops a lot more than the playground. I just think it looks like it fits this topography. So I'm a little biased, biased towards this version of what this will bring. I mean, not necessarily the gardens, but versus the play structures, because it looks like it's an active park. And the exercise, but also something that you would just go for a stroll to take it in, Other comments, and then we'll move on to the Whitman and Maple.
I just had a question. I had a question
yeah.
for Mike. Mike, do you need some assistance on the survey for this? We have a PI group that could assist if you needed some help. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll be in contact about that.
Okay.
Okay, Robert, you got the information you need?
I do. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, let's move on.
All right, so Whitman. So this is we call it Dry Creek runs through. This is there was a suggestion that we have a neighborhood park. You know, the demographic was assumed to be of a younger crowd and younger families, and so this design incorporates a play area with a dry creek bed theme that runs throughout the area. The site is obviously much flatter than previous sites, so this is a view from Southeast Maple Street. And you have two larger play areas of different uses with open green lawn in front. You have shade structures throughout, and then a meandering path that connects. And that dry creek bed runs throughout the entire site. You know, if you recall, there's an existing storm facility and a swell that runs on the front of this and wraps along the back edge. So we're tying into that aesthetically. Because it's one of those features without much work you'd have to kind of incorporate. So we're using that to our advantage here on this design. So a plan view of that design. So Whitman Drive, that's where the existing swell is, and we would connect off of the existing sidewalk that runs there to allow an extra access point. There is current parking already established along the parallel part of Maple Street, so we're not adding any parking on this design. And then we have a single connection that runs to the middle and then bisects the two different areas. So if you're looking for picnic table opportunities, you have a couple picnic tables here, and then your programmed play areas on this one, and a shelter gazebo type facility on the front end. The front of the kind of facing Maple Street does have use of like kind of your rural fencing just to tie the theme in. So you can kind of see that in conjunction with the gazebo shelter here. A lot more use of native plants, a lot more trees just to create the aesthetic with those. So this is the left play structure. Not an all-inclusive design, but kind of a programmed play structure that you typically see. The color theme supports some of the use of the Dry Creek, but also a little bit of vibrancy in the colors. So this is one play structure here with two large shade structures in combination with some trees. Talking about the design of the Dry Creek bed, you can see that it runs through the middle of the site, and we have opportunities to create a little boardwalk that simulates. There's no water running through it, but the idea that you're crossing over the creek just to reestablish that design. And then you have a couple swing sets here with the shade structure on this one. And here's another view with inside near the gazebo with the open lawn areas. We were cognitive of keeping the front relatively open and providing sight distance just to reinforce the septet design, crime prevention through environmental design. So we were intentional not to put a lot of tall shrubs and deciduous trees that can be limbed up to provide access from the adjacent roads into the park, and then keeping this front area very open with just traditional lawn. Any comments, questions on this design?
I think it looks awesome. A Dry Creek needs like a concrete alligator though, I think. It looks great. Really, really creative.
You could do some like concrete fish.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you could carry that theme actually, if you wanted to, if you did that sort of like, just a small touch, it's like, oh, yeah. Could be kind of cool. Yeah.
Any other comments?
I think this, for what is going to be next to it, the age, the families, young families, I think this will really
Scratch an itch.
Yeah, it absolutely will.
Did you have other version of this one as well, or is it?
Yeah, we have a second concept that incorporates the pickleball court and the pump track.
Okay, let's see it.
Okay, sounds good. So this is the incorporation of the pickleball court and pump track. It's a more simplistic approach, and there is no access from Whitman Drive on this one, just because there's a pump track on that side. So we do have to do a single access point from Maple Street. And then we're kind of dividing the two different recreational uses kind of intentionally by kind of having this open courtyard plaza area, concrete with a shade structure and some benching opportunities, just to reinforce those two separate kind of recreational pieces. We're maintaining the existing swell with the rock. Like I said, that's our existing feature that we have to maintain. So on the design of the pickleball courts, you've got two courts with shaded seating areas, kind of waiting areas. So as the game's playing, you can have someone waiting in line and still be a little bit shaded for the heat. And then on the other side, you have another shade structure where you could sit while you're watching either the pickleball courts or the participants using the actual pump track. Another angle kind of coming from Maple Drive here. The colors, that can be easily interchanged, but again, very simplistic design, and just kind of separating the two recreational uses. Here's a up close view of some of the shade structures. It's a 3-posted tier with kind of an arch going above and traditional bench seating. There is no picnic tables in here on this concept, but a lot of opportunities for sitting and waiting for next chance to play. And then another view kind of from the back side of the site facing back towards Maple Drive of the pump track. So with that, I'll take questions and comments.
What's that surface around the pump track?
So there's a number of ways you can build those. This one is a kind of a modular system where you kind of piece it, they're segmented pieces that you kind of fit together to create it. And so that would be intentionally like a carpeted surface, like a athletic turf type surface. And we were just using kind of the sandy color just to make it feel like it's dirt. Our intent is not to make it a kind of a dirt area, which sometimes pump tracks are kind of just made out of just dirt and not covered up. But that was the intent, is to have it some covered material on that.
I definitely like that design part of things. I think, the beauty of this area is there's a lot of usable time for recreation through the winter when it's not raining and snowing. There's a lot of cold but dry days to be able to utilize it, and having a surface that can be used when damp is certainly a big thing. I think on both of these designs, I think the use of the really bright primary colors is something I feel like I don't have a particular. I would love to see those toned down, I guess, on either one of them. Both of them feel like they just really jump out and don't kind of become part of the community, but really draw the eye in different ways. So, but I just from the standpoint of diversity of parks, like we talked about a minute ago, I love this design. There's nothing like it in the region in terms of the pump track. And we know from community feedback already that there's a desire for significantly more pickleball access in the community as well. So this brings a new element and a desired existing element to it. But I also can see how that, the traditional park setting style with that new apartment complex going certainly would get, I think, a lot of use as well.
There's an exclusivity to the purpose of this park that on one hand is an asset, on the other hand is a liability. The other park is geared much more towards the younger and general use. This is very vertical, which I'm not disagreeing that there's a need for this, or it would be a different. But I do think that having diversity will be necessary if you're going to have something like this. People should have another place to go, and I think they do. So this may fit awesome.
I think that's a good point. If it weren't for the massive redesign of Lions Park coming down, I think I would probably feel less inclined to push for something like this, but what we're going to have with what's effectively one of the nicest and most well-equipped parks in the entire region here shortly within just fairly short stone's throw. That again makes me lean towards something like this.
Plan for this area, you're gonna have two demographics, the younger families from the apartment complex already. When a quarter mile, the average age in this area is 34, so quite a bit younger. But then you're gonna get a lot of visitors too, because they have a property next door to it. We're working through plans with them, but it looks like it looks like a 4-story hotel at a convention center is going over there too.
Wow.
So you may have a visitor element as well from that.
And that's like, could be anything.
Yeah,
So you really, that would be probably better served by a general park,
yeah.
but. You can't be all things to all people all the time. You gotta, yeah, no, and you do a pretty good job with it, really. Yeah, the proximity of other resources, yeah, it's a good point. This might be just the right thing for them.
Yeah, I will tell you what, I love the first design, the Jordan is kind of, made a really good point. I think the diversity of parks really is something that attracts, I think, people to this. I mean, yeah, these three are within blocks of each other, and then you've got Kiwanis.
Kiwanis is only like 3
Yeah,
blocks
from there, so we've got a lot of opportunities and options for folks. And I think this, for me, I go, yeah, I think this is different in it. For that reason, I like this design.
The other thing too that hit me is, we're just blocks from the university and some of the apartment housing for the university, as well as the tread shed where they do bike repairs and things like that out of the school, as well as rentals for the students. So that places this pretty nicely as well.
This guy knows what he's doing. He knows this, he knows that what's on the ground. Thank you. That was a nice piece of local knowledge.
Well, we all have our hobbies.
Any other comments, Norman, Jenna?
Well, do we have any idea the demographics of the redo of the apartments there on College Avenue? The one that just the university, it used to be the university hallmark. That I'm glad to see they're being renovated, but I'm wondering what demographic might occupy them.
As my.
I've been struggling to get contact with them, so the legal name that they've established is 220 North College LLC. When you end up tracking who owns it's this company out of Seattle called Seattle Pacific Realty. And they have a track record doing mixed use stuff like all over the Northwest, like retail and residential. So I've sent the information, but I've not gotten anything back yet, but that appears to be who's the owner of it.
So which end is the Nordstrom rack gonna go on? And then,
I have no idea, but it makes me think that while they may be positioned it for apartments now mid to longer term, it would not shock me if they're trying to do like a mixed use thing. Because their entire portfolio is mixed use. There is not like a single apartment thing.
Where are we talking about? I missed that.
College Ave.
The old Hallmark Apartments next to Rogers Bakery.
So my one comment on this would be to have some picnic tables within this design, just
Some other green space perhaps. Yeah.
Even if it's on the other side of the creek, I don't know, maybe that would be sort of separate. Or the Rock Creek drainage. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I think you want to invite people there to relax and lounge and have a picnic or come on their lunch break and as well as come to be active on the pump track. And so I think scattering some of those benches and picnic tables perhaps around some, depending on where trees are located, you don't have to put shades over all of them. You just use the natural shade. Yeah.
This is Jenna. I think my only comment is definitely, I think the pump track is such a cool, unique feature. I wonder if by the time this project's completed, where, how the country's gonna feel about pickleball, right? Will it be going out? Will it still be popular? How many complaints do people get from the noise in Kiwanis already? I wonder if maybe a hybrid between version 1 and this version might serve the area better. Is all the land there, like, is it for sale, or kind of where are we in negotiating? Because the actual development of this space could draw or encourage a certain kind of developer if it's a feature or amenity that they don't have to offer a park because there's already a park, or they don't have to offer a community gathering space. So just some thoughts there about pickleball in the future, and thinking about what it looks like in our community in a few years. Because I've heard in the city of Seattle they've started to take them out because of all the complaints around people don't like the racket noise. So just some thoughts.
You know, we live right across the street from what are now, is it 6 or 8 pickleball courts? So we're real familiar with that noise. And, but it's amazing how much traffic these things draw. And I don't know, I think that there's gonna be maybe some innovation in the way that they, the materials or the stuff that they're using to play the game with, that will address the noise question, eventually. But, I don't see any sign of it letting up. Maybe it's gonna fall out of, favor. But, yeah, it's, I don't know what this, I don't study pickleball, so maybe somebody somewhere can say, oh yeah, well, it's gonna fall out of favor. But, it's very strong, the interest, from, tennis, I can tell you that.
I don't think it's gonna fall out. I mean, when I just came back from Chicago, I mean, my military never even heard what that was, because that's not the Midwest thing. And now they converted all tennis courts to pickleball.
Yeah.
So now in Chicago, people know what that is, which actually is shocking to me. So I don't think it's gonna go away by any means. And I will say, the apartment complex, they bought that property already, so they're gonna start grading it soon. We're just waiting on a final civil plan for the parking lots, but the buildings themselves are already permitted. As far as the hotel thing, I think whatever design we come up with here, I can put that as a little bit of a development condition, given the amount of things where we can get some money that way to help support this. Now, what I will say is that we have the pickleball Kiwanis Park, and then with another RCO grant we have, within the next 2 years, we'll have pickleball at Veterans Park and Homestead. So you also have to weigh that as well, like how many of these things are you gonna put around the city too? I will say on a personal level, though, the pump track thing, I'm super stoked about that part of it.
Well, and maybe there's opportunity with this design to have a little bit of everything, have one pickleball court here, but then have that center section have a bit more, family and community space that's a little more general use.
Robert, you had 2 playgrounds on the first version. Would one fit in the middle of this fairly easily, aesthetically, look nice? And I know you don't have the.
Yeah, I think you have room. I just on that previous comment, I was just thinking about it. You take this and you maybe rotate it on this front side here, and you put the play area, play structures here. on this back. So you'd have this path that maybe comes there if you're just dedicated to the play area itself. That would further define those uses.
So we can have it all.
Cool.
Well, yeah.
I
we
love
want
it.
Right.
So,
Yes,
And-
we want both and the playground.
right, and a rope swing.
Right. And I think the dry creek bed aesthetic from the first concept could be easily kind of integrated into the new location so that it kind of feels like a cohesive, like interaction between all three uses that ties it in.
I love it.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So do you got the direction you need on that one, Robert?
Yeah, one less pickleball court and tie in a area for the play structure.
Unless you can flip that pickleball court in the front and do both, so we can have it all. You know, but for sure, you know, incorporating one of the play areas.
Yeah, I'll take a look and see if we can keep two, but you might be pretty tight on that one.
Sure.
And timing on this would be, it'd be good to have, this design also approved by the next meeting, because I believe the property owner is gonna come in about the hotel and other stuff with the final plans toward the end of the year. So if we have this going, we can ask for a contribution.
Sure.
Which is what I would like to do. Because regardless, this property, just to remind everyone, we're basically stuck with because it's part of that well property, and then that dry creek is actually an overflow through the well. So it's not like you could split it, but sell it for a house or something. We're stuck in perpetuity with this.
Yeah, I think we can get there by next meeting, and if perhaps when you are, have it designed, Robert, if you can get it over to the city, I mean, if you want to push it out to us to look at in between.
Yeah.
That would be helpful.
Okay. Is the next meeting in a month or?
Yeah, it's September 22nd.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get on these changes and get something as an interim review.
Perfect. Okay, any other comments before we move on to the next item? Okay, thanks, Robert. Great work.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Happened? You're up. Community events.
Let me get the screen back up. All right. Hi, I'm Athen. I am your deputy clerk and city events coordinator. Last time we met was May 26th, and quite a bit has happened since then. May 25th was our block party, first one since 2018. And this time the city spearheaded it, whereas the last one, it was kind of Walla Walla University's project. We had about 78 vendors and we estimate 1,000 attendees, and it was successful. People really enjoyed it. People wanted to be an annual event. Some people wanted to happen twice a year. So hopefully that remains a community event. July 2nd, we have Freedom Festival again. We had a concert, fireworks show, vendors and whatnot. We estimate nearly 2,000 attendees. So that was also a raging success. August 3rd, the farmers market successfully transitioned back to Lions Park since construction was postponed. The community is a lot happier. Vendors are a lot happier. Let's see, we average about 250 shoppers every week for farmers market. Let's see. On August 10th, in order to celebrate National Farmers Market Week, we hosted Big Rig Day at the farmers market in Lions Park. And we estimate about 400 attendees, and people loved that as well. They want that to be an annual event, and I plan to do so if we can. We have about 11 community participants that brought tractors and semis and garbage truck, construction equipment, a crane. And so the kids and the adults ate it up. We had 4 movies in the park this summer between June and August. Those were held in Kiwanis Park. And then up next we have Trunk or Treat on October 30th. And our Winter Fest in the Light of the Avenue Parade on December 7th. And then we do it all over again.
Turn over the calendar.
No,
Excellent, excellent. Great community.
Do we have a date for that block party next year?
We don't, this one was kind of a trial run. We
Yeah.
had a grant that we were able, through the police department to take advantage of. And so, hopefully we get some kind of grant funding again. But we definitely like end of April or May. We do have to balance with, the food truck night begins in May and spring fling is usually in May. So trying to not do the same weekend as those other big events. But we definitely like that time frame because farmers market begins the end of May. So trying to balance event
Right.
spacing.
And good to hit while you're still in session.
Yes, having the students involved was a hit and we had most of our music, or all of our music was, student bands. And so that was really awesome.
Okay. Thank you. Keep up the great work. Mike, Kiwanis Park?
yeah. So since Lane's Park thing is going till next year, what we're doing, because we have to put a farmer's market somewhere. And we know what happened this year with the general attitude we have it here. We're extending the engineering contract by Anderson Berry. And we're gonna be actually putting in electrical over Kiwanis Park this fall. You'll see what we're thinking of right now, but that's the general plan. So that way we can move it there next summer.
That will be much better received
Yes.
than the parking lot.
Yeah. Cause that's why we didn't have there this year. It doesn't have electrical.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, this is a much better plan and I appreciate it because I don't remember we were permitted to have it here. You guys must have done quite a bit of work to get it back there. But I know the community and vendors appreciate what you did, so. So that's great. This makes sense. Plus, gives Davis some places to plug in out there.
Is there any need to do water at the same time? One
French.
French?
They have
Yeah.
to do one potable. stick.
Yeah. And we're trying to prepare too, because it sounds like longer term, spring fling wants to remain there.
But it seems like for summer programming for kids and stuff too, some of the camp stuff ends up out there, and so that'll make that space even more flexible for use.
Yeah, that is where the Camp 4 YMCA does that, so.
That'll be good. Okay, anything else, Mike, on that?
No,
Okay. Draft of the community center floor plan and schematic.
so this keeps growing, so look it over, let me know if you have any comments, but we have the earmark for it and. We're trying to assemble a bunch of financing, we're gonna go for a state appropriation. Then through our federal lobbyists, it turns out there's a state-funded childcare nonprofit called Community Minded Enterprises. And they can get state ELF grant money if you incorporate like what they need into the space, so. They're willing to do that, so for classrooms on the bottom floor. And then with the library, the latest twist on that is they found out how much building costs in Tucci. And They realized they only have near the amount of money they thought they would for the building on College Avenue. So it appears with this plan, I know it's going before their board, so stuff could always change, but it appears that they want to have the full branch on the second floor of this. So if you, as you peruse through a document, you'll see the second floor would be the library. So if we do this, there's gonna be a series of MOUs between the city, community-minded enterprises, and the library, but it is doable. It appears that is the route, though, they are taking with the library. And then we're able to augment essentially the footprint of this building, because since there's earmarks surrounding it, if you all recall, RCO previously, the State Department, they were having a fit because the original community center essentially wasn't permitted by them, and we went through the whole process to have the footprint of it excluded from the park because they originally paid for the park footprint. Luckily, with this appropriation, we can actually write in federal language into a bill that says like whatever square footage we need for the building is what we get, and they are no longer gonna police that. So that's actually a really good thing, but you can see what we're working through here. I just want to open this up for comments as this is ever evolving.
Comments, questions?
It looked great. I really think it'll be a huge asset to this community.
And this would also include a commercial kitchen too, in the downstairs and community room, so. So yeah, I mean, actually cost on this is going up quite a bit. Cause if you recall, originally we thought it was gonna be in like the 4 million time frame, and with adding the library and a whole nother floor, it puts it above 6. However, now we're adding a lot more partners, so it's actually filtering down the liability from the city monetarily, because there's a lot more partners now and such.
And better put a third floor on it and make it a pickleball court.
Like little rooftop.
Hey, yo.
Yeah, wow.
You know, one wonder I have in looking at this floor plan. I can't judge how large that community room is. How large is that by comparison to what is currently there?
It's a little bit bigger, not by much.
Because I mean, I think that one thing I would like to see perhaps that's I know it's sort of a add-on or is that patio really expand out. I think you're gonna get a lot more perhaps rentals of this space. If they can have that outdoor patio. I think think about, you know, community music and the arts. I think the patio could be expanded and will attract that sort of nuance to this building. But I think it's just I'm just
Great.
tickled.
So time frame on this is, I believe we'd be working through all the agreements, latter part of this year, early next year. Do final architectural on this right throughout 2024. And then aim to this will almost be like a phase 2, if you will, Lions Park. So this would likely all go down around 2025, 2026. The only part to time frame that would be that really is the unknown is the whole demolition piece, because that will just get interesting, but we'll work through it. So that's where we stand.
Kids come on. Crazy. Okay, any other questions or comments on the community center?
I'll just echo your comment about the outdoor patio space, that with a commercial kitchen there could be that next larger size of community or group events. That you don't need the community room. I mean, you have a lot of good weather, especially spring and fall, that could be a wonderful mess.
New vows there.
That's exactly what I was saying, you know, thinking is like, wow, that could work out great for an anniversary.
Yeah.
You know, dowry commit right there, all the family and everything. Yep. Get married again in the park.
Right. Okay, Lions Park Reno update, Mike.
Okay, so where we're at on it is I finally believe we have come very close to actually satisfying all these random conditions that keep popping out on us. So I got an email from State Recreation Conservation Office saying they've submitted the entire folder of stuff from the Army Corps, from Fish and Wildlife, from every other agency you could believe, to National Park Service. In that they have not received any comments asking for additional stuff from the National Park Service. So barring that, I believe we'll probably be getting our grant agreement for the last grant, which was the Land Water Conservation Fund, which is passed through from National Park Service shortly. And I believe we'll be in a position to finally bid this thing this fall. So that way throughout winter, spring and summer, we finally get this done. I believe we're finally getting there because this just keeps going and going and going and going. So, yeah, much to chagrin of staff, but at least it's finally getting there.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions for Mike? Okay, local road ROW, urban forestry management plan, 115 pages.
So this was introduced the last meeting, and this takes the form of a previous one we did for city parks and arterial roadway rights of way. So we got a state grant that pays for, that paid for all this. And pretty much we end up getting a GIS inventory of all trees on local road rights of way, so ones that are in arterials. And then a management plan on how to maintain them and recommendations in there on like where additional ones could go. So now we have a general decent framework of the exact type of trees within city right of way that exists. So that document will help advise city public works staff, because we do have a person that deals with park and arbor stuff now, which is a little bit different because historically we really didn't, like, everyone shared the duty, which meant historically trees weren't really looked at, and now they are. So this between the other plan, which you all recommended adoption of, and then this, now we have a good catalog of everything within city property and right of way.
Questions or comments for Mike?
And so that establishes some sort of standard for.
Yeah, it establishes standards, and we now know the approximate age and condition of all of our trees, so we're able to map maintenance a lot better.
So that it would be try to be in places where you didn't have a whole group that age out all at the same time, and that they would be replaced with ones that are maintainable in the appropriate size.
Yeah.
And don't get cut down by the utilities company and
Well, and that's just why I've been trying to encourage a lot more, because I will say historically, Public Works was very much like cut down stuff first, ask questions later, and we're trying to change that.
Okay. Other comments or questions before we move to the action item of approving this?
There's a lot here.
Yeah.
Do you need approval of it today?
I mean, if you need more time to look at, I would need it by September, the next meeting. I just put it in the action item today because I put the introduction, the meeting a while back, but it could go to the next one if need be.
I'd kind of like to review it.
Okay,
Honestly.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so we'll table that to the September 22nd meeting.
yeah.
Which brings us to closing items. That's it. We'll meet back here on September 22nd. So, need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second?
Seconded.
Okay, second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Right.
I.
Right, we adjourn.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan.
Yeah. Everybody, thanks.
Yeah.
See ya. Great Friday.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.